I don't think I can think of a better way to head into the All-Star break than with 5 consecutive victories. And that's what the Orioles have done after sweeping the Minnesota Twins over the weekend. I'll recap the series, plus talk about the Orioles' first-round pick, Enrique Bradfield Jr., all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Monday, July 10th, 2023, and welcome back to the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap an awesome weekend of Orioles baseball as they swept the Minnesota Twins on the road to head into the All-Star break on a 5-game winning streak. I'm going to recap all 3 games, get you the 5 things you need to know from Game 1, Game 2, and Game 3 of the sweep. Plus, a little bit more Orioles news and notes on the podcast with things like some huge promotions in the minor leagues and the Orioles' first-round draft selection, Enrique Bradfield Jr., from Sunday night. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Sleeper. Swing for the fences on Sleeper picks, and you could win up to 100 times your money. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. So let's jump right into a series sweep over the weekend by the Orioles as they take all 3 games from the Minnesota Twins, winning it 3-1 in 10 innings on Friday night. They win it 6-2 on Saturday, and then they absolutely thump the Twins 15-2 on Sunday to complete the sweep and complete the quote-unquote first half of the season. Orioles finished that first half on a 5-game winning streak as they head into the All-Star break, and they go to the break with a 54-35 record, 19 games above 500, tied for the season high for the O's. And many of you who thought this season was over about a week ago, less than a week ago, when the Orioles had lost 6 out of 7, this is why you're patient in a long 162-game Major League Baseball season, because teams usually, good teams, when they have a bad stretch, they follow it up with a really good stretch, and that is exactly what the Orioles have done here. So let's start with Friday. Orioles win it 3-1 in 10 innings. I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from that one. And the first thing you need to know is that right there on Friday night on Apple TV Plus was the Cole Irvin that the Orioles traded for back in the offseason. That was the guy that the O's saw pitch for the A's the last 2 years and thought, you know what? Let's go get him with some of our prospect depth, put him at the back end of the rotation, have him pitch fairly well, and eat some innings. That Cole Irvin is who they traded for, and he finally showed up. It took him until July 7th, but he showed up. 6 1/3 innings of 1-run ball for Irvin, by far his longest start as an Oriole. He allowed just 3 hits. He struck out 4, and the big one for Cole Irvin, did not walk anyone, threw only 84 pitches and allowed only 4 hard hit balls in 6 1/3 innings. Now, he was pulled with a runner on second and 1 out in the 7th after he gave up a 1-out double. A lot of people were wondering, well, why would you pull him? Well, the O's only had a 1-0 lead at that point. They had taken the lead in the 6th on a Cedric Mullins sac fly. The bullpen was fairly rested, and even though Irvin was pitching well, that double was hit hard. He had let a couple of balls squared up the last few innings. And for all the people who said, get Cole Irvin off this team, those seem to be the same people who said, leave Cole Irvin in the game. You can't have it both ways. He has struggled all year. He was finally pitching well. End him on a good note, get him out of the game. Unfortunately, Mike Baumann did allow that run to score, but I think Hyde managed it well, and Irvin showed that he's going to at least stick in this rotation for a little while longer. Second thing you need to know from the Friday win is that Cedric Mullins made a case for the play of the year in this one. He did drive in the only run in the first 9 innings of the game with that sac fly I mentioned in the 6th inning. But the play he made in the 4th completely changed the game. Byron Buxton at the plate as Cole Irvin had allowed his first 2 base runners of the game. Twins had first and third with nobody out in a 0-0 game, and Buxton drives a ball to straightaway center field, looked off the bat like a classic Byron Buxton home run, looked like it was going to be a 3-run shot. It was going to be the same old story for Cole Irvin. The O's were going to be down 3-0. But Mullins tracks it perfectly, leaps at the wall, and makes an incredible catch for the first out of the inning. I said it was first and third. It was actually first and second. So the runner did tag from second to third, but a run didn't score. And then Cole Irvin bears down and gets the next 2 batters out with a strikeout and a ground out to keep the game scoreless. Mullins legitimately saved 3 runs on that catch. And there was an awesome moment after the play when Buxton just kind of gave him the what for, and Mullins kind of tipped the cap and gave him the what for right back to him. Apparently those two are good friends. Mullins had robbed Buxton of extra bases with a great catch in Baltimore last Sunday. So a really cool moment and just another incredible play by Gold Glove level center fielder Cedric Mullins. Third thing you need to know from this one is that Ramon Arias was the guy who came up with the key hit in this game. As we went to extra innings, tied 1-1, Arias was leading things off in the 10th with the zombie runner at second, facing John Duran, who, remember, gave up those 2 runs to the Orioles last Sunday when the O's scored 2 in the 8th to come back and avoid the sweep at home against the Twins. And although Duran did throw a scoreless 9th inning, he came back out for the 10th and he wasn't the same. Arias takes the first pitch of the inning. Remember, the O's are really good at hitting the first pitch. Takes the first pitch of the inning for a double into right center field to score the go-ahead run and make it a 2-1 game. Orioles would rally and tack on another run in the 10th on an Aaron Hicks sac fly to go up 3-1. It is huge with the zombie runner to get multiple runs, especially if you're the away team in the top of that 10th inning, and that's exactly what the O's did. And the double gave Arias a 5-game hitting streak. That's starting to come around a little bit more finally for Arias since coming off the injured list about a month ago. Fourth thing you need to know from this one, I mentioned his name already, but Mike Baumann had another tough outing in this game. He was really the only pitcher who didn't pitch well for the O's in the 3-1 win on Friday night. We had Cole Irvin, who I've already talked about, and then the bullpen after Baumann pitched pretty well. Danny Coulombe got a big out. Yenye Cano threw a scoreless inning, and we'll get to Felix Bautista. But Baumann came in with that runner on second and one away, trying to protect that 1-0 lead. And he hasn't been the best of high leverage guys for the O's this year, but he's been in those kind of spots before. And he just came in there and did not look good. He gave up a 101 mile per hour single to Willie Castro, a 101 mile per hour line out by Alex Kirilloff. He was lucky that was an out. And then he walked Christian Vasquez and came out of the game. And luckily Danny Coulombe came in, got Max Kepler to ground out. Really great play made by Jordan Westberg to rob the Twins of a base hit and the lead to keep the game tied at 1. But Baumann now, who was at one point kind of ascending up into the top level of Orioles trustworthy relievers, is now kind of falling back into the middle of the pack of middle relievers who are struggling. Baumann, if you remember a couple of weeks ago, in that 10-inning win the Orioles had over the Mariners, when Ryan McKenna hit the walk-off homer in the bottom of the 10th, Baumann threw that incredible top of the 10th inning where he came in there, struck out the side, didn't even let the runner get from second to third, and was incredible. Since that awesome outing against the Mariners, Baumann has pitched in 5 games. He's thrown just 3 2/3 innings, including back-to-back outings where he's recorded just 1 out. He's allowed only 3 hits, which isn't bad, but 6 walks in those 3 2/3 innings to just 3 strikeouts. He is really fighting the command right now. It does hurt to have him not be a great middle reliever at the moment, but later in the pod, we'll talk about kind of who stepped up and filled the Baumann role this weekend. But speaking of bullpen, the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles 3-1 win on Friday night is that Felix Bautista just continues to do things you can't think he can do. Now, Bautista entered the game actually in the bottom of the 9th inning with the game tied at 1, and you would think, oh, why are you not saving your closer for when you take the lead in the 10th? Well, the meaty part of the Twins' order was due up bottom 9 in a tie game. You got to get Felix out there to get those outs, and that is what he did. Now, he did walk a batter. He struggled with command a bit in the 9th, but he put up the 0, and then he got to the 10th. The O's gave him the 3-1 lead, and he was just masterful. He did not even allow the zombie runner to score, got a fly out, and then back-to-back strikeouts of Vasquez and Kepler to end the game. Bautista just continues to be just a marvel out there for the Orioles. I mean, he should be, if they get the chance, closing out the All-Star game on Tuesday. Just a ridiculous pitcher and he closed out a really impressive 3-1 win for the O's in 10 innings on Friday night. But the O's wouldn't be done after that. They got to Saturday with a chance to win a series, and they had Tyler Wells on the mound, which is always a good thing. But for the Orioles, it was their offense against Sonny Gray that got it done on Saturday. And coming up next, we'll talk about the one big inning that got the Orioles to clinch the series over the weekend. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp. Now, therapy is something that has worked for a lot of people in their lives, and it's worked for me as well, whether it's the stresses of everyday life or a large event happening in your life, something that changes any of those situations. Therapy can help you out. And with BetterHelp, therapy is really a lot easier at this point because you can chat with an online therapist as well. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime with no additional charge. So it can really help you stay connected, navigate your life, so you can move forward with confidence and excitement. So let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnMLB to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnMLB. So we're recapping the Orioles' sweep over the Minnesota Twins. And I mentioned they took game one by a score of 3-1 in 10 innings on Friday night. Saturday was a little bit easier. Saturday, a 6-2 win for the Orioles as they clinched the series in that one. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from the win over the Twins on Saturday. And the first thing you need to know is sometimes just one big inning is all that you need to win a baseball game offensively. And that was exactly the case for the Orioles on Saturday afternoon. They came up in the top of the second inning, trailing 1-0 after Tyler Wells had allowed a double and a ground out and a wild pitch in the bottom of the first to give the Twins the lead. And they were facing Sonny Gray, who had, like a 2.5 ERA coming in. He's been great this year. And the O's just jumped all over Gray in the top of the second inning. And it really started with some just good-looking batted balls. Started with back-to-back-to-back singles from Ryan O'Hearn, Austin Hayes, and Aaron Hicks, and it loaded up the bases with no outs. Colton Cowser drew a 4-pitch walk to tie the game at 1. Ramon Arias had a really impressive walk to make it 2-1. And then Adam Frazier, wouldn't you know it, on the first pitch with the bases loaded after back-to-back walks, lines a 2-run single into left field, makes it a 4-1 game. Then Gunnar Henderson laces an RBI single up the middle, makes it 5-1. Adley did strike out, but then Santander just crushes a ball 113 off the bat for an RBI single to make it 6-1. And honestly, it could have been more. Ryan O'Hearn lined into a double play, the next batter to end the inning. That ball looked like it was ticketed for right field to make it 7-1 and more. But the O's just jumped all over Gray in that second inning. And it turns out that was all they were going to do offensively. Now, nicely, it was all that they needed, but that was all they were going to do, because the second thing you need to know from Saturday's win is that the Orioles did not record a hit in any other inning of this game. That's pretty impressive. 8 no-hit innings for the Twins, 6 runs on 6 hits in that second inning for the Orioles. It's a little concerning that they didn't get anything else going. I mean, Sonny Gray was able to settle down. He actually was able to finish 6 innings because he was really efficient after the second. But you know what? If 6 is enough and it all comes in 1 inning, that's fine by me. Third thing you need to know from this one on Saturday, the 6-2 win, is Austin Hayes returned to the lineup. That was really the number one positive from the game. I mentioned his single. He went 1 for 3 with a single, a walk, 2 strikeouts, and a run scored in the game. Of course, we got the great news on Hayes that he will now be starting the All-Star game on Tuesday because of a couple of injuries to guys who were voted to be in the starting lineup. Mike Trout and Aaron Judge both injured. Austin Hayes is going to be one of them who starts the game. That is awesome for him, awesome for the Orioles, but even better to get him back in the lineup. Remember, he had that weird collision at first base, actually against the Twins last Sunday in Baltimore. Missed all week, missed Friday night's game. He was available off the bench Friday, never played, but was put back into the starting lineup on Saturday, starting in left field, and looked perfectly fine. Got himself on base a couple of times after just the hip contusion. They never wanted to put him on the IL because they knew it wouldn't take 10 days. And as it looks like, he only missed 5 days and was right back in the Oriole order. Fourth thing you need to know from the 6-2 win on Saturday is that we saw the very, very good version of Brian Baker out of the Oriole bullpen. Now, I mentioned earlier that, with Mike Bauman's struggles, they probably needed somebody else to once again kind of step up into a middle relief role. And the guy who stepped up this weekend was Brian Baker. 2 huge scoreless innings out of the pen on Saturday, relieving Tyler Wells through a scoreless 7th, followed by a scoreless 8th to keep that 6-2 lead. He did allow 2 hits and walk a batter, but he struck out 3. He only allowed 2 hard hit balls. He lowered his ERA to 3.68 on the season. And Brian Baker's been so up and down this year. It was really good to see him get 4 whiffs on the slider. He was still fighting, that changeup command. Let me tell you, that thing just floats away from him. But when he can get that pitch in the zone, it is filthy. He got one of his strikeouts with it. That's the Brian Baker we need to see. Not perfect, right? Did allow 3 base runners in 2 innings, but 2 zeros, 36 pitches. That's the Brian Baker you need. Hopefully, when we get back for the second half, he can continue to look like that Brian Baker because he's been better lately. Baker, in the month of July, in 3 appearances, has thrown 4 1/3 scoreless innings. The Orioles need more of that from their right-hander. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 6-2 win over the Twins on Saturday is that Tyler Wells just kept being Tyler Wells. I mean, I think, if you could bet on this on FanDuel, I would do it. To say that Tyler Wells will exactly throw 6 innings and allow 2 earned runs. I would bet on that in every single start this season, and I would probably win some money. Tyler Wells goes 6 innings, allowing 2 runs on 6 hits with 4 strikeouts, 2 walks, and 82 pitches thrown. Now, you could argue he should have gone back out there for a 7th inning at 82 pitches, but I was okay with it, and Brian Baker certainly picked the team up as well. Only 5 hard hit balls for Wells, who lowers his ERA to 3.18 on the season. But I think the biggest thing for Tyler Wells, even above another quality start, he did not allow a home run. That has been the issue for Tyler Wells all season. 21 home runs allowed, second most in the big leagues. Only the 5th time in 17 starts this year that Wells did not allow a homer. It was a wild pitch in the 1st inning that allowed a run to score, and then in the 5th, it was an RBI double that allowed that 2nd run to score. But that was it. No home runs. And when he's not letting the home run ball hurt him, he ascends to a different level. And I mean, I joked about the 6 innings, 2 runs, but Tyler Wells' last 3 starts have all been exactly 6 innings and exactly 2 earned runs. You can kind of book that at this point for Tyler Wells, but he helped the Orioles get the 6-2 win and clinch the series by winning the first 2 games. And a series win, especially on the road, especially against a team fighting for the playoffs like the Twins, you're always going to feel good about that. However, the Orioles were not done after Saturday. They were hunting the sweep and were hunting a 5-game winning streak heading into the All-Star break. And on Sunday, they were able to do that in very, very convincing fashion. Tell you how they did it coming up after this. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Sleeper. Do you want the chance to win more money with less picks? Well, head to Sleeper, where you can win up to 100 times your money on just 2 or more fantasy baseball picks. You go in there and you take a guy who you think is going to have a good night. Maybe you want to take, Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, Anthony Santander, Jordan Westberg to get some hits in their matchup. Sleeper is now offering 100 times payout for up to 8 pick contests. Choose as many as 8 players that you like and pick more or less on your favorite baseball stats like homers, strikeouts, hits, and more. Get your picks right and you could win big. And the app, it's super easy to use as well. It's just a very, very fun way to play fantasy baseball. So use the promo code Locked On, and you'll also get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. So the Orioles were able to sweep the series against the Twins over the weekend. Now heading into the All-Star break, got the win 3-1 in extras on Friday, got the win 6-2 on Saturday, came into Sunday looking for the cherry on top. And wow, did they get it. The Orioles winning it 15-2. Can't think of a team that's ended the first half on a better note. 5-game winning streak and a 15-2 win on the final game before the All-Star break. But that is what the O's did to the Twins on Sunday to wrap up the sweep. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from the 15-2 win Sunday. And the first thing you need to know is, quite frankly, season high in runs for the Orioles. 15 runs for the Birds. Of course, they scored 14 in the win over the Yankees on Thursday. And then 3 days later, they one-upped that with 15 runs on 17 hits for the Orioles. 6 home runs on the season for the Birds, or on the game for the Birds, I should say. Much more than 6 home runs on the season. Everybody got things done in this game for the Orioles. The only starter who didn't really do much was Ryan O'Hearn. Now, some of that was because he was lifted for a pinch hitter in the 5th inning, but it's kind of crazy when Ryan O'Hearn, who's been your best hitter at times, is the only guy who really doesn't contribute to this offensive output. I mean, everybody up and down the lineup, Gunnar Henderson, a couple of hits from the top and a walk and an RBI. Guys like, Austin Hayes, huge day at the plate. He hits a home run in his second game back from that little hip issue, a monster shot from Austin Hayes that tied the game at 1 in the second inning, went into the upper deck in left field, a majestic homer. They hit 106 off the bat, 434 feet. Guys were just bombing the baseball. Honestly, Aaron Hicks had a home run that I could not believe in this game. Hicks hit one off the bat as a right-handed hitter, the switch hitter Hicks, that I am still amazed that it went as far as it did. He hit it right-handed to right field, the opposite way, 105 off the bat, 409 feet, a line drive laser that got out of there for a 3-run homer to put the O's up 8-1 in the 5th. It was just an incredible home run. And you had the 2 from Anthony Santander. He was just crushing the ball in this game. Everybody was doing it. 2 for 4 for Santander with the 2 solo homers. Both of them were just moonshots from the left side of the plate into right field. He's swinging an incredibly hot bat right now. First homer was 97 off the bat. Second homer was 101 off the bat. Just a ridiculous game. And the second thing you need to know from the 15-2 win is it was really the 2 big innings for the Orioles in this one. It was the 1 big inning we mentioned Saturday with the 6 runs. It was the 2 big innings on Sunday. Yes, they did score in the second on the Hayes homer, and yes, they did score as well in the 7th, but the Orioles got 7 runs in the 5th inning and followed up with 6 runs in the 6th inning, and it was kind of out of nowhere because Joe Ryan, the Twins starter, was cruising through 4 innings. Then he came out there in the 5th. Jordan Westberg had a little bloop single, and then Ramon Arias delivers a 2-run homer, and all of a sudden, it's 3-1 Orioles. Then he walks a couple of guys with 1 out, and all of a sudden, Ryan, who had 10 strikeouts to that point through 4 innings, is out of the game. In comes Giovanni Moran, and he was terrible. And all of a sudden, the Orioles put up a 7 spot in the 5th, and, they go up 8-1. You go to the 6th inning up 8-1. You don't really have to keep the pedal to the metal at that point, but they do it, and they start blasting homers in the 6th inning, and they put up 6 more runs. It was an unbelievable offensive display by the Orioles. Just amazing stuff from an offense that a week ago looked dead in the water, could not find a way at all to score against this Twins team. The Orioles scored, remember, 3 runs in 3 games against the Twins at Camden Yards just a week ago, just last weekend. This weekend, they score 24 runs in 3 games against this same Twins team, a pitching staff that threw Bailey Ober on Friday, Sonny Gray on Saturday, and Joe Ryan on Sunday, all having amazing seasons, a team with a top 5 bullpen in baseball, and the O's just slaughtered them, specifically on Sunday. Third thing you need to know from this one, Adley Rutschman looks like he is ready for the Home Run Derby. He will be competing in the Derby tonight as the number 8 seed in the tournament. We'll see how far he can get, but it's just awesome to see him in the Derby. And he launched his longest career homer on Sunday. Adley went 2 for 4 with a walk and that 2-run homer. That was an absolutely majestic blast in the 6th inning off of Adley's bat. Traveled 461 feet into the upper deck in right field. Looked like it traveled 761 feet to me. 109 miles per hour off the bat. I've never seen Adley square up a baseball like that It was amazing to watch. He hits a couple of those in Seattle. He could be the dark horse to win tonight's home run derby. Fourth thing you need to know from Sunday's game is that Ryan Mountcastle finally is back, rejoined the Orioles with a roster move Sunday, had missed really about a month with vertigo, something he had been dealing with. It's really tough to deal with it at that age. I mean, me and Ryan Mountcastle basically the same age, and I have been dealing with some vertigo recently. Not really sure why it's happening, but it is really, really tough to deal with. And listen, I'm not doing anything close to playing a professional sport. Ryan Mountcastle was trying to hit a ball coming in at 99 miles per hour, and he talked about it before the game. He just said he basically couldn't see the ball because of everything that was going on with the vertigo he was dealing with. Sounded like it was maybe coming back a little bit as he was trying to come back to the team. But he said over the last week or so, he feels like he's gotten it under control. So they end the rehab stint at Norfolk. They activate him to the roster. They optioned Bruce Zimmerman on Sunday to make room for him. And so the O's are carrying 14 hitters versus 12 pitchers. At some point shortly after the All-Star break, they're going to go back down to 13 and 13, which means they're going to send down a hitter and call up a pitcher. It's going to be really interesting to see who that hitter is right now that gets sent down. That's a conversation for probably later in the week. But it was awesome to see Mountcastle back, and Brandon Hyde put him in a perfect spot to return. Orioles threatening in the fifth inning, kind of starting their rally after Arias had hit the home run. They had gotten the starter Joe Ryan out of the game. Ryan O'Hearn was coming to the plate. He was already 0 for 2, and Moran, the lefty, was going to come in. The O's have only let O'Hearn face a lefty 8 times this year. One of the reasons why he's been so good is they have allowed him to avoid left-handed pitching. Well, they end up going with Ryan Mountcastle off the bat because despite his struggles, he has crushed lefties. And what does he do on the second pitch he sees back? He lines an RBI single up the middle to give the Orioles a 4-1 lead. What a cool moment. Mountcastle, you could see the joy and elation on his face when he got to first base was incredible. I missed his vibes on this team. I'm sure the Orioles did too. We'll see what his role is moving forward. Maybe he's just in a platoon with O'Hearn and only plays against lefties, but he's a threat if he does that. And it was awesome to see him do it. Orioles immediately pinch ran with Cowser. I don't think Hyde wanted him playing a whole game. Just wanted to get him in there a little bit, get his feet wet back at the major league level. And that was an awesome moment. And then the fifth and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 15-2 win on Sunday is that, well, I haven't talked about their pitching yet, but when you allow 2 runs in a game, your pitching's got to be pretty good. And I mean, shout out to Nick Vespi and Edward Bizzardo, who each threw a scoreless inning out of the bullpen. But the story was Kyle Gibson. Gibson in this game against his old team, 7 innings, 2 runs on just 3 hits, 11 strikeouts, tying a season high to just 1 walk for Gibson. The 2 runs he allowed, 1 came on a solo homer in the 6th. The other came where he started the game really poorly, again, just like he started the game in New York against the Yankees last week when he walked the leadoff man on 4 pitches and then gave up a 2-run homer to Gleyber Torres. Gibson once again walked Carlos Correa on 4 pitches to open the game, threw the first 5 pitches as balls, and then allowed an RBI double to Edward Julian to make it a 1-0 game. And then he just settled in. He retired like 14 straight batters after that RBI double, ended up completing 7 innings on just 94 pitches. I mean, it's not like, he really had to dig deep to get through the 7 innings. He was just carving up the Twins after that first inning. It was really impressive to watch. And this was like a different Kyle Gibson. This was 22 whiffs on 49 swings. 22 whiffs is the most by any Orioles pitcher this season. And it was done by Kyle Gibson. And the 11 strikeouts also ties an Orioles high on the year by any of their starting pitchers. I mean, he threw a lot of sweepers, got 9 whiffs there, 5 on the changeup, some on the sinker, the cutter, the curveball. He mixed his stuff very well. His last 3 starts had not been good. There was the disaster start against the Reds. That one wasn't good. I was in the ballpark for that one. There was the start after that looked even worse. Then he had... or the start before that, I should say, that looked even worse against the Mariners. Then the bad start against the Reds. Then the one against the Yankees that was a little better, but still 4 innings over 6, or 4 runs over 6 innings. Then you have this one, which was dominant. Hopefully he gets to do this, take a little break, all-star break coming. We see the April and May version of Kyle Gibson come back because that was ridiculous what he did on Sunday. And the Orioles put together the sweep 15-2 over the Twins and go 54-35 in the first half. And the Rays have been struggling a little bit. The Orioles are just 2 games back of the first place Rays as they head into the All-Star break. That is a fun time here in Birdland. But usually my weekend recap episode would end now, but there was a whole lot more going on Sunday. So I'll get to it real quickly. First of all, some very, very cool minor league promotions were reported by Steve Molesky of Masson on Sunday. 2 players going from AA to AAA. One is the right-handed pitcher Chase McDermott, one of the guys who came over in the Trey Mancini trade last season. McDermott's had some elite strikeout stuff at AA. He's going to go to AAA. If he pitches really well, he could be a relief option for the Orioles by the end of this year. That's how good his breaking balls are. We will see. The even cooler one is Kobe Mayo, who's basically been the best hitter in the minor leagues over the past month. He's dominating AA. It wasn't hard for him anymore. Kobe Mayo is in AAA. That's going to be fun to watch. He is very close to the bigs. I don't think Mayo gets to the big leagues this year, but 2024, I think you see Mayo in an Orioles uniform. And then maybe the best of all, Jackson Holliday next week is going to play his first game in the upper minor leagues. Jackson Holliday promoted from High A Aberdeen to AA Bowie. Now we're really going to see what he can do, right? He's going to face that much higher level pitching. It is a large jump from High A to AA. Very, very excited for Jackson. And of course, Jackson Holliday was the Orioles' first overall pick, number 1 in the first round of the draft last year out of high school. Turned out to be the right pick, and he is now the number 1 prospect in baseball. But the Orioles, they had the draft Sunday night, and they made another first-round pick, but it was a little different, right? They weren't picking first. They were picking 17th in this draft. That is very different. Mike Elias had picked in the top 5 his first 4 drafts as Orioles GM. So I will say 17 was probably a little bit different for them. They took a guy that wasn't as much on my radar for the Orioles to take, but the Orioles did take Vanderbilt center fielder Enrique Bradfield Jr. with the 17th pick. Now, the Orioles had 2 other picks as a second-round pick and then a comp pick on Sunday night. Those picks happened way too late into the night for me to put them on this episode. I will break down those picks plus all of the day 2 selections coming up on Tuesday's episode. But they did pick Bradfield 17th overall. Now, some guys I really liked, like the high school shortstop Arjun Namala, the college outfielder Chase Davis, the college pitcher Hurston Waldrop. They were all available at 17, but they went with Bradfield. Now, who is Enrique Bradfield? First of all, you need to know elite speed. Best runner in this draft. He's got 80 grade speed. He is going to steal you 1 million bases. Stole 37 bases at Vanderbilt this year. In 2022, as a sophomore at Vanderbilt, he was a perfect 46 for 46 stealing bases. And oh yeah, he stole 47 the year before. It's ridiculous speed on the base paths. 21-year-old left-handed hitter, also plays an elite defensive center field, gets to every ball, has not the greatest arm in the world. That's probably the one thing that takes him a little tick down, but it's still a solid arm, incredible range, makes some great catches, really, really smart baseball player out there, has a lot of tools as well, commands the outfield so well in center, elite defender, elite runner. Now, the thing that has a little bit of question mark right now is the bat. Now, the bat started off great. Freshman year, 2021 at Vanderbilt, he hits .336 with an .865 OPS. Now, he only hits 1 homer, but they kind of knew they'd have to develop his power as he put on more muscle. 2022, a little bit lower average at .317, but the power came a little bit. Hit 8 homers, .913 OPS, stole the 46 bases, had an amazing All-American type year. Coming into 2023, people were thinking Enrique Bradfield could be a lockdown top 5 pick if he keeps this up. Well, he took a little bit of a step back offensively in 2023. Still had a great year with Vanderbilt, starting center fielder, hit .279, .410 on base, .429 slugging, and .839 OPS. But that OPS was his lowest of his 3 years. Now, 45 walks to 40 strikeouts showed he still had a great eye and still avoided the Ks. 37 out of 44 stolen bases, but he only hit 6 homers. The power and the batted ball data actually went down a little bit for Bradfield, which is a little concerning. And that's why some people were a little put off by Enrique Bradfield. Now, our draft guy, Joe Doyle, who came on the pod Friday to preview the draft, he still had Bradfield as his number 15 overall prospect on his big board. So seems like good value for the Orioles to get him at number 17. But I think he was a prospect who swung one direction or the other from different teams. Some people thought we can fix the bat again. He'll be an elite all-star center fielder. Other people thought, yeah, he's a good runner and fielder, but I don't know if the bat's ever going to be there. The Orioles were obviously on the we can develop him side. Now, the power is the question, and the batted ball data is the question. But if there's one team that has shown they can develop bats in the minors, it is the Baltimore Orioles. Bradfield's floor is an everyday big league center fielder who plays elite defense, wins Gold Gloves, steals you at this point 50 to 60 bases in these rules, and hits 8th or 9th, can get on base, doesn't strike out a lot, only had a 12% swing and miss rate this season. He is elite at the plate in terms of his swing decision, 12% chase rate, I should say. He does not chase balls out of the zone. That's why he had more walks than strikeouts his entire college career in the SEC at Vanderbilt, with a lot of pressure on you, facing the best college pitchers out there. But if the O's think they can develop that bat, he doesn't have to be a 20-homer guy, but a 10-homer guy who's hitting a lot of doubles and driving the ball into the gaps a little bit more from the left side of the plate than he was doing in his junior year. I trust the O's to develop that, and I think they can do it. Now, in terms of slot value, the O's might be able to save a little bit of money there and spread it elsewhere, but I wouldn't think a huge underslot pick. But Mike Elias said after the draft, Bradfield was much higher than 17th on their board. They were happy to scoop him up there. And here's the one thing I'll say. Kind of a polarizing player, because some people think electricity, we can get the bat there, he's going to be amazing. Other people think the bat's never going to be there, it's getting worse, he's not a big league bat. What I will say is I think the Orioles drafted, at worst, maybe the most exciting and electric player in this draft, because he's going to do something awesome when he is on the baseball field. Did you see Elly De La Cruz of the Reds steal 2nd, 3rd, and home on just 2 pitches over the weekend? That's something Enrique Bradfield will do when he gets to the major league level. So watch out. Yes, there is potential for this pick to not be a super high ceiling, but the floor is high for Bradfield. And if the O's hitting development team can do what they've did to plenty of other hitters that they've drafted, Bradfield's going to be an all-star center fielder for the Orioles for years to come. But that'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in, watching, listening. Sorry it was a little longer episode than usual, but we had 3 wins to talk about. We had minor league promotions, and we had the first couple rounds of the MLB draft. Now, I will be back tomorrow. We will talk more MLB draft, talk about the 2 other picks that the Orioles made Sunday night that I just wasn't staying up late enough to get to. Got to go to work in the morning. We'll talk about all the day 2 picks that the Orioles make in rounds 3 through 10 on Monday. And we'll also get you a little bit more on Enrique Bradfield, what kind of player he can be, plus a look at how Adley Rutschman did in the Home Run Derby. That's all coming up on tomorrow's episode. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.